World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity. This is clarity.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
I want to say a big good evening going out to you right across the globe from Kervin, Julien on World Jam Global Radio. It's another edition of Issues Today. My, have we got a show lined up for you? With all the jibber jabber and all the pitter patter and everything else that's been going on around the world. Today we give you Whose Life Matters.
I paid for my crime.
Especially since the Black Lives Matter movement was given a higher profile after the Alton Sterling and Philando Castile murders, slaughters, and execution by police.
Too young and foolish to stay in school.
There's just been a lot of chit-chat and this and that and
with my hands and
stuff that just doesn't make real sense to me, and we want to give you a people's view
over the street. I was getting money, life is so sweet.
As to why Black Lives Matter.
The whole game has been real.
So today,
I'm a changed man.
On Issues Today, alongside me and my co-host, Dr. David Romei,
it's too short to spend it all in jail.
We have three prestige guests. First and foremost, up first, we will have Paula Arrietta, and I'll be introducing her in about 5 to 10 minutes' time.
For my crime.
We also have two of our very own World Jam Global Radio DJs and presenters who will need no introduction whatsoever. Coming out of New Jersey, we have the legendary Skills, aka Sean Downie, and coming out of the murder capital, which is Hackney, East London, we have Daniel Sirkels Kelly.
But I never got home my own supply.
And believe you,
that's why I'm telling my story to you.
Both of them have an opinion worth listening to.
I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do.
Funny thing is, when we started doing this show, when me and Dr. David Romei first did the police brutality show almost 2 years ago or so, with our first one was with Alex Salazar, if I remember correctly. I never anticipated that all this time later, we will be seeing a continuous rise in the amount of individuals shot, executed and murdered at the hands of police. When I last checked last week, I think it was 544 unarmed individuals murdered by police this year already.
Already did my time.
Well, we're going to be taking you for a trip around the world today. From Connecticut to New Jersey, to Coventry, to
I paid for my crime.
To East London.
I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back.
And I'll leave Paula to tell you where she's from in a very short while.
Like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen.
All over social media this week, Twitter, Facebook, you name it.
There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good.
The slaughter of innocent ones have been continuing to be posted. It's generated a real interest.
Getting money, life is so sweet.
There's been a recent Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations in the UK also,
need no gun in my hand.
Showing that Black Lives Matter, the movement itself, BLM, is beginning to make a rise throughout the world.
Hell, already did my time.
But still, there's so much negativity.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
And with Congress trying to outlaw
I paid for my crime
and ban, they were seeking to make BLM a terrorist group, which got defeated, rightly so.
My time. I paid for my crime.
Today we ask some very important questions indeed. And first and foremost, let me just say a big thank you to our production team. Teresa Ashton standing in for our very irrepressible Linda Sue.
Story to you and you.
But together they are dynamic and a force to be reckoned with.
Now sit back.
And they do keep the Issues Today show on its toes.
I wouldn't do it again. I was young.
I want to thank them all for the work they do behind the scenes.
But I was nobody.
And all the promotional work that they do.
Had a lot in common.
Keeping our sites alive and up to date with current news and events.
Wow, like a real alligator, especially all you hate.
While I've got the time next week, we do have a show with a difference. We have another young lady from Ladbroke Grove, Notting Hill. Her name is Denise Watson, and that's another show that you don't want to miss. A young woman who was brought up in abuse, became a drug addict, turned her life around, and wrote a book called Notting Hill Girl. She'll be live on this show next week, talking about how abuse and the types of abuse led her into an addictive life, a very sordid life, and one that she's fortunately been able to put behind her. That's next week's show. But without no further ado, let me introduce you to my co-host, my numero uno, my number one, shotgun rider, Dr. David Romei. How are we doing, David?
Kervin, I am in Connecticut. We're going to have rain this afternoon, I hope. And the ocean is full of water, but nobody can drink it because it's full of salt as well. And all the people are swimming in it and making noise. And the clouds are overhead. And I'm hoping to God that we have the rain and it doesn't go out over the ocean and drop somewhere in Iceland where they don't need it. So otherwise, it's all right. What is going on in America? We just finished the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Now, Philadelphia is where the Constitution and the Declaration came, and it is a city of long-standing importance in America. It is also the city from where Benedict Arnold left to go to West Point, where he betrayed America. But this year, Philadelphia once again became a very important city because it was the city at which Democrats fully displayed the danger that is Donald Trump. 120 national security and foreign leaders said that Donald Trump will make America and the world less safe. It is amazing to have a four-star admiral stand before the nation and say, Donald, you are not fit to polish John McCain's boots, because Donald Trump said that John McCain, a U.S. senator with whom I have a lot of disagreement, but nevertheless a true hero in the Vietnam War, a man who never betrayed this country, he said, John McCain's not a hero, he got caught. Heroes don't get caught. Well, I don't know Donald Trump that he got caught 6 times, and all 6 times he had to declare bankruptcy. He got caught 100 times cheating on his women, and he wound up with 3 divorces. Donald Trump has been caught out as the biggest liar in the history of the world. So if he doesn't like people who get caught, I recommend that he go to the furthest place on the Mariana Strait off the Philippines and drown himself 30 below sea level. Now, our strength comes from our humanity. And that was a theme, as we said, stronger together. But Donald Trump is a walking, talking, recruiting poster for the terrorists, to Admiral Hutz. And Leon Panetta, one of the great Democrat leaders in America, said, we have to go after bin Laden at the riskiest moment. That's what Hillary said in making a decision. But he also said that Donald Trump is a man whose only decisions concern himself and his own welfare. But the biggest and the best of all was Michael Bloomberg, the 12th-term mayor of New York City, a man so humble, although he's worth $43.5 billion, he takes a subway to work. A man who truly believes in service beyond self. He called Donald Trump, who says he's worth $9 billion, but Reuters and Forbes estimates he only has $150 million cash, and he might be worth $1 billion. So he's a big, fat liar, and Bloomberg is worth a minimum 43 times more than he, called Donald Trump a dangerous demagogue. The man Plato warned us against. The man the Constitution was written to protect us against. He said, Donald Trump is not a problem solver. He's a bomb thrower. And I'm from New York, and I'm a New Yorker, and I know a con when I see a con, and Donald Trump is a con. The risk the richest thing about Donald Trump, according to Michael Bloomberg, who is a Republican and independent, he said the richest thing about Donald Trump is his hypocrisy. He is risky, he is reckless, and he is a radical. Wonderful use of the alliteration. But then came the deadliest of all the deadly insults, the one that made Donald Trump flip like a flapjack in a hot skillet down south with a strong arm behind the Griswold iron skillet. Here's what he said. We must elect a sane, competent, and rational person to be president. We cannot elect Donald Trump. In other words, he said Donald Trump is insane, incompetent, and irrational. That has never been said about a major political candidate in the United States of America in our entire history. Let me tell you, it is very clear after the Democratic National Convention that if Tim Kaine and Hillary Clinton are the light, then Donald Trump and Mike Pence are the dark. And they are the tohu bohu, which God talked about in the book of Genesis. All the world was tohu bohu, in chaos, in a flux, unrecognizable, without form, in which evil awaited like a serpent in the newly formed garden to strike the innocent. Now, we want to know what Trump's relationship with Putin is, and how much has Putin lent him, and what is his relationship with Russia, and why is Russia breaking into the DNC emails and computers to help Donald Trump. And we want to know why Donald Trump has a 36-point lead in America over Hillary Clinton of uneducated, angry white men. Why does he have a 36-point lead among uneducated white men? Because fear, fear, and fear. We have nothing to dream but fear. He lives in a dark world, deep, full of a cesspool of evil. Now, the most noble moment in the last 20 years of my life was when Khizr Khan, the second man to appear on the world stage as a Muslim, the first being the newly elected mayor of London in the United Kingdom. And Khizr Khan appeared as a noble, sane, rational leader. He, like the new mayor of London, appeared as a very beautiful spring day after the harsh winter of Boris Johnson and his ignorance. Now, Khizr Khan appeared with his wife before the world with nobility. And he asked Donald Trump, when he was speaking of his son, an army captain who gave his life for his fellow soldiers and was killed in George W. Bush's fantasy world of weapons of mass destruction and nuclear weapons forming a cloud over America like a mushroom in the imaginative, corrupt mind of Condi Rice, his subservient, worshiping moron as Secretary of State. And he said this, have you ever read the Constitution? And then Khizr Khan pulled a copy of the American Constitution out of his pocket, throwing it in the face of Republicans who have done this for 20 years, as if they and they alone own our Constitution. And he said, Mr. Trump, have you ever read the Constitution? Of course, the answer is no, because we all know Donald Trump swore to the American people at the Republican National Convention, that corrupt, imbecilic circus of folly in Cleveland. He said to them this, I will defend all 12 articles of the Constitution. All 12 articles of the Constitution. In other words, he'll also defend all 90 American states, even though we have 50. Because 90 is to 50 what 12 is to 7. There are only 7 articles of the Constitution. Now, that's Khizr Khan stood there like a noble man, and he spoke of his son and the dream and the love of America. And He said that his son went to the University of Virginia, one of the great schools in America founded by Thomas Jefferson. Now, let me finish by saying this. A lot of Republicans, like Daniel Pipes, a neocon, conservative, pro-Israeli Republican, so Republican the color red is not sufficient. He only represents his side of the Republican Party with real blood. But Daniel Pipes quit the Republican Party. Others have quit the Republican Party because of Donald Trump's megalomania, narcissistic insanity. But all of America, black, white, yellow, red, all of America, Jew, Christian, Muslim, all of America, believe in God or not believe in God, should ask one question. Why is Speaker Paul Ryan? Why is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell? Why are these Republican leaders sitting on their fat tuchus and allowing this man to drag down their party? I say their party because the great American people, even those people who are upset about me not winning, the great American people know the risks are too great. The challenge is too important. That places like North Carolina, where a federal judge overturned their racist voting law. Cases like New York, where now the state attorney general investigates police murders so that local prosecutors can't cover up for their corrupt and crooked police. They know it is too important to trust this nation to Donald Trump. Now, let me end on this one note. Hillary said this: we cannot entrust our great country to a man who can be baited with a tweet and stay up all night in his insane Edgar Allan Poe twisted pendulum mind, going back and forth with and more evil, to put his finger on the nuclear power of this great nation, to risk our allies, to risk our freedom, to risk our prosperity. We cannot risk it. We have come too far to go backwards. It's the way it is. Connecticut, the United States of America today.
Wow, David, I cannot thank you enough for that introduction and that thought-provoking rendition of what's going on in America today. Let me just say this before I introduce our guests. Something that you might like. As you may well know, what's going on in the politics in the UK at the moment, with David Cameron, the Prime Minister, stepping down, Theresa May stepping in for him, being elected by her peers, and then the Labour Party in absolute disarray, calling for the head of their leader and refusing to come up alongside him and calling for a leadership race and battle to elect a new leader. And because Jeremy Corbyn now has decided that he's thrown his hat into the bag, and as far as he's concerned, he's running again, the latest from the Labour camp is this: they have actually gone to the highest law in the country, asking for them to be able to take over the name of Labour and all of its assets to set up another Labour Party, because they refuse to work with Jeremy Corbyn, who they no longer respect. What do you make of that? Hey, David.
Are you?
Yeah.
Actually, you were going in and out.
Okay. Well, what do you make of the fact that? The Labour Party are going into another leadership battle, but they do not want their current leader as part of that. And so what they have done
they
is
don't want Jeremy Corbyn.
No, they've gone to the law, the highest law of the land, asking for them to be able to take over the rights and the assets and the name of the Labour Party, excluding him and his cronies from it, and setting up a totally different individual Labour Party without Jeremy Corbyn. Now.
Well, this reminds me of the Anglican Church in Africa and other places in America that are southern, when the Anglican Church said that gay people could be a part of their church, and then they wanted to take over the assets of the Anglican churches where that wasn't permitted, so they could separate. It reminds me of the same thing. If you can't win, you try to break the system. I don't know about that. Jeremy Corbyn is not liked very much by Israel and the Jewish community, and I wonder if that has something to do with some of those people who oppose him on that grounds.
He's
because
actually,
I've been reading in the Jewish.
Yeah, he's actually said some pretty negative things that have got him into a lot of trouble. That he obviously should have done some reading before he opened his mouth, and it's all coming back to backlash.
He's attacked.
Yeah, he may be another
why
double.
Don't they just vote him out?
Well, they have. He's got no votes. And that's the whole point. He's actually got no MPs to support him. So I'm not even sure why they're even allowing him to run. Anyway, that's a whole nother show. Probably we'll do that some other time, maybe. Right. Let us introduce our guest for today's show, whose life matters. First and foremost, let's go to Paula Arrietta, because I'll tell you something. I've been wanting to have this woman on my show for a long time. A very strong advocate, an activist in Black Lives Matter, and all issues relating to our basic human rights. Good evening, Paula.
Good evening, Kervin, and thank you. I appreciate you inviting me onto the show. And hello to all the rest of your guests, Sean, Daniel, and David.
Hello.
Just what did
I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Yeah, I'm kind of having a little of a hard time hearing you guys as well.
Okay, no, we can hear you clearly now.
Okay, good. I've most of my experiences is on life experience. I'm an advocate for others, for human rights, and like I say, mostly based on experience and a whole life of experience of a complete different like array of things, from the judicial system to police brutality.
Right, somebody's got some plates and dishes banging around the place. Mute your mic, please. Go ahead, Paula. Hi, Paula.
That's pretty much it for
me.
Okay,
no worries. Well, listen, we're going to come back to you very shortly. We also have with us, DJ and presenter Daniels Sekels Kelly. How are you doing, Sekels?
Good evening. Greetings to everyone. Greetings to all the fellow presenters and also to all the listeners.
Okay, just tell them a little bit about yourself, sir.
Okay, well, basically, I'm a DJ and presenter on World Jam Global Radio. I can't claim to be any sort of activist or anything like that, but just commentate basically.
We're losing you, David. Your signal's going. Hi, Daniel. Your signal's going. Okay. Can everybody else hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, you're back. You're back now, Daniel. Let's try and have no silence on the air. Silence on the air is a no-no. Okay, you was introducing yourself there, Sekels. Continue, please. Okay, let me move very swiftly on to legendary skills. Otherwise, or his real name is actually Sean Downie, but we call him Legendary Skills. That's his DJ name. Hi, Sean. Are you there? Well, we seem to be having problems with our guest today, so let's just move. The whole call has dropped. Bear with me. I'm going to be coming right back. Okay, we seem to have had a little bit of problem with the call. Not sure what's going on there, but I'm going to call it all back in now. And so just bear with me as they all come back one by one, I hope. And if not, let's do that again, shall we? I'm having problems with my. Let me get rid of that, shall I? Let me get. Let's do this. Oh, bear with me. Okay, let's do this way. Turn my sound off on here, so I'm gonna have to.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Blah, blah, blah. He met him.
Have we got you there now, guys?
Yes, Legendary's back.
Back in
What
the
about
day,
Paula?
I didn't really
back.
care about the
Paula
system.
back?
It was all about survival. It
Paula,
was do
Arrietta?
or die. I had to.
Okay, let's bring it back in. The only one that we're waiting for is Paula. Okay, something went wrong with the signal. I think we were introducing you, Sir Kells.
Yes. Yeah, as I said, I'm basically, as I said, a DJ presenter on World Jam Global, but also a social commentator, basically. I'm not an activist, but I'm a social commentator. And, yeah, I have a lot of interest in what's been going on lately. And I see quite a few parallels with what's going on in America. Sort of what goes on in England as well. So, yeah, I'll be kind of exploring that in a while.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. And last but not least is Legendary Skills, Sean Downie. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, if you do, the introduction is all yours.
I'm here to give perspective from the USA end. I'm very passionate about what's going on here in the US based on what's the surrounding, how the rest of the world views us as a people, as African Americans, how they portray our resolve for what's going on in our neighborhoods. I think mostly the media is to blame for what's being put out there. I don't think the country as a whole is in a civil war environment. I don't really think that the cop killings are new. I think what's new is the cell phones, the coverage, and the ongoing trolling from the internet. As far as what Dr. Romei said, to piggyback on what he said, the uneducated 35 to 55 white male, it could be the uneducated 18 to 37 black male. There's a lot of that in our country right now. So just to piggyback on a few points, I'm just here to give perspective.
Thank you very much. We really look forward to hearing what you have to contribute to the show today. I want to go to Dr. David Romei first before I bring you guys in, because again, at the beginning of the show, I did mention that me and Dr. David Romei actually did our first police brutality show over a year and a half, almost nearly 2 years ago, whenever it was. And our very first police brutality show was with the impeccable Alex Salazar. And little did I know back then that all this time later, I would continue almost on a weekly basis to see an increase in the amount of young black males in particular being executed on the streets of the United States of America at the rate that we're seeing, and all of these activist groups that have now been formed in order to protest and raise awareness. Little did I know it would be such a huge outpouring of passionate activism as what we're witnessing. But Dr. David Romei, you've lived out there and you've spoken on these things before I even met you. So what is your take on what we see being projected, especially towards the Black Lives Matter movement as an activist group?
There are three things that I see, and I'm not sure that I have the answer, but I see three things. One deals with the minorities of America, and that means blacks especially, but also Hispanics. The other deals with the white majority that sees their position changing, and that's mainly uneducated white men and women. And the third deals with our point in history. Let me take it one by one. First, the whites. The whites have had privilege since America was founded in the 17th century, and they have always considered their position unassailable. because the law permitted them to enslave African Americans who built the country with their sweat and hands. And it allowed them to basically commit genocide against Native Americans and then to discriminate against the new people who came in, the Asians, by making it illegal for them to own land, to vote. They put them in concentration camps in World War II. They built the railroad tracks in America, but they weren't good enough to use them. So the white people have always had this privilege. After World War II, it became untenable because so many African Americans had been in the military service in World War II and then later in Korea, and they contributed so much. When they came home, they weren't going to take it anymore. And you had the great civil rights movement. Now, that has led to the point where we have a black president relatively quickly. In the terms of world history, 5,000 years of recorded man's history, you can say that 50 years is very, very fast for the phenomenal changes that have taken place. It took nearly 200 years for the serfs of Russia to find any level of equality, and some say there's no equality now. So it's a quick movement. The whites are unable to digest it. It's as though they ate an entire noodle soup with one helping, one sitting. They ate 5 pounds of noodles, and now they got indigestion. And they fear. They fear for their lives that the world is changing in a way that they cannot accept. The African Americans, on the other hand, love their freedom, and they have excelled in this freedom. A black president, 2 black attorney generals in a row, that is really looking out for their rights in a way that white attorney generals and women have never done. And they're making themselves prosperous in this country, a part of America. It's every way meant by the Constitution. But the whites are mad at it. Now, the number one job reason that there's been unemployment is not because of foreign workers, not because of Mexicans, not because of educated African Americans, but it's because of technology. All those people building cars have been replaced by computers and robots. But you know, Donald Trump can't go out and protest against higher productivity because of robots and computers, so he blames it on the foreigners, on the Mexicans, on the black people who have unfair advantages, on Native Americans. So he blames it on everybody but the truth, and the truth is higher technology. He doesn't consider the fact when he says he's going to build steel mills and coal mines are going to reopen, that 99% of young people, black, white, Hispanic in America, have no intention of working in a steel factory or pouring iron or digging coal. There's a new world out there. They can't do Pokemon Go while they're in a coal mine. So he plays on their hatred. And finally, the blacks have said, no more of your police brutality. No more of you white people who are afraid of equality and justice using your police to shoot us dead. And you know what? That has always gone on. It's nothing new. What's new is the camera, the iPhone, the video recorder. What's new ever since Rodney King, and Rodney King was the first major case of this, is that we got it on tape. And that tape makes them pay. And it makes them mad, because now they're held accountable. And before they could do whatever they wanted, then they could lie and a prosecutor would protect them. Well, that doesn't work anymore. It's still working a little bit, but it's not going to work anymore because the President of the United States sees it and the people are not going to take it. Now, the final thing I want to say is this. There's a point in American history, and that point is this. We are at a crossroads. We take this nation forward, and we go into greater freedom and greater opportunities for all people. And the only way we can do that is what Bernie, and you know, I've got my issues with Bernie Sanders, but what Bernie said is we must have the means to bring all of America. The 36-point advantage of the white uneducated for that dumb Trump. Those people who are African American, those people who are white, Hispanic, Mexican, European, we must bring all of America forward into a new dawn of freedom and opportunity. And Bernie and Hillary agree on that. The only difference is that Bernie addressed the technical means of doing that. by making the richest pay their fair share, by reforming Wall Street, by investing in education, by making homes available and tax reduced on those homes, and by giving opportunities for all people of all race and creed, and fundamentally ensuring that all Americans can have a university education or professional training if they want it, without coming out so full of debt they have no hope for a future, as did their grandparents and their parents. And that is why a lot of people were fired up by Bernie. So all these three things coming together, the fear of the whites, the courage of the blacks, the means of the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, have put this nation on a new path. And we have to answer a question. And that question is, do we have the courage to move forward? Or do we go with Donald Trump and certainly go backwards? And that is how I explain Black Lives Matter. And one more thing.
Quickly, because legendary is dying to get in.
When people say all lives matter, what they are saying is, I do not acknowledge Black lives as having a special need for repair in our nation based on the historical discrimination and brutality we, the powerful, have exercised against them.
Absolutely. Well said, David. And I support you in that, and I'll have my own points and views to bring across. But let's just get legendary straight in there. Sean, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Dr. Romei, another gem. Well said, as usual. Well said. I piggyback on everything he said. I just want to push it a little bit further and try to see if I can get his feedback on this. Donald Trump right now has the Bible Belt, Middle America, the farm states. You have to understand the demographics of the United States. The outskirts, the East Coast, the West Coast, that's where you get your major cities. The inland, Middle America is a lot of farms, a lot of national parks, big lakes. Middle America, he has these people wrapped up in the dream state, as you're saying, the privilege being lost, the Mexicans taking your jobs, the uneducated, blah, blah, blah. But the last time I looked it up, these people are going to vote away a lot of their own rights. He's attacking welfare for the middle class. Welfare in states like Utah, Nebraska are a lot higher than New York State, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. And I don't think people actually look into that and take that into totality. In the wintertime, a lot of these farmers get subsidized food, subsidized housing. Again, Donald Trump is blaming the Mexican. He's making promises of changing things in Philadelphia. Once these things happen, it's going to change in Nebraska. It's going to change in Colorado. It's going to change across the country. And I don't think anybody is actually looking at that as what it would do to our economy. Right now, I think if we lose Mexican cultivating, farming, agriculture, and somewhat construction, our economy is going to dive. It's going to dive. No one will take these jobs for $8, $6.
Wow. And that's a great observation that you've made here. Did you want Dr. David to respond to that?
Yes, Dr. David, what's your take on that? A lot of these guys that own these Welch's farms, the guy that owns Chick-fil-A, who taking care of your chickens in Utah? They're Mexicans, and you're giving Donald Trump $500,000, and he's going to disrespect your core worker.
Well, first of all, let me say this briefly. You're exactly correct. But in America, you have to remember, the purpose of not educating white people who vote is very simple. The purpose of not educating blacks is to keep them down. The purpose of not educating whites is to keep them voting Republican. And the white people, men and women, who are uneducated, vote Republican. They vote for the very party that sends them to war, takes their children's lives, prohibits them from having an abortion, doesn't give them medical health care, doesn't let them have a right to vote, and puts them in factories where they kill animals, kill chickens, and work for minimum wage and have no future. There is a huge majority of Americans who vote against their very interests. Remember, who brought the Hispanics, mainly Mexicans, to America? Who made that possible? The Chamber of Commerce and Republicans, because they wanted Mexicans to work under the table for less wages than the whites so that they could bring wages down, make more money, give it to their Republican friends, and make themselves billionaires. There is a money, purpose, and derivative attached to all of this. Follow the money. Who let them in? Who are they using against whom? And why do the uneducated vote against their own interest? And that's what you're hitting on, and I agree.
Here's the thing, guys. Right, this is quite similar, and hopefully we'll get Daniel Sakels Kelly to come in and in a very short while, and Paula also, because I know she's waiting in the wings, and I've got some questions for her also. But this is not too dissimilar to the 70s and 80s revolt that we had right here in the UK. When bearing in mind when they brought in the blacks, especially in the early 60s, latter 50s, to go and do all the work that the white people of the UK didn't want to do. On the buses, on the trains, the bins, the domestic work, in the hospitals, the cleaning jobs, and the labouring work, and all the jobs that they didn't want. And then as unemployment started to get to its highest points in the mid to latter 80s, as we started to hit 3 million unemployed, then there was this big revolt against the black community being here in the UK, claiming that we'd taken all of their jobs. And they had to be reminded that we didn't take any jobs. We actually got the jobs that they didn't actually want to do. And most of that was based on their own laziness and their willingness to rely on state benefits as opposed to getting up and doing something for themselves. And most of the blacks that came into this country, they actually came into this country to better themselves and to better their families and to help and support their families who were living on lesser incomes back home. We didn't take any jobs. And I should imagine what we're actually seeing with what's being said out there in America actually replicates what we saw here back in the 70s and the 80s of the UK. Did your family have much experience of that, Daniel Sakels Kelly?
Well, not really. I mean, my mum, she was a nurse from she left school. She actually came here as a child, so she went to nursing, went to the hospital around our ways and got into nursing straight from school. My dad was in the transport system. He was a train driver, so that kind of didn't affect them so much. But what I would say is that you're drawing comparisons to the 80s, but I think it's quite relevant to even now, with the whole Brexit thing and with the whole thing about blaming immigrants, unemployment and all that to like now on the Eastern Europeans. You understand? Like back then it was us. Yeah. But now it's the Eastern Europeans, etc., that they're kind of like, putting the blame on. And you know what? When this all boils down to, like, David, you touched the nail on the head when you said about why you have uneducated whites in America. Well, it's the same kind of thing in the UK. We have they should do a survey, because I believe it's the same thing. If you look at the demographic of who voted for Brexit, it was the kind of typical uneducated white underclass, which you talk about in America. We have a lot of that in the northern regions in England, as I'm sure you're aware of, Kervin. Yeah. You understand? Who are disenfranchised and uneducated and angry and frustrated and being sold this lies to keep them in their state of
uneducation.
To keep them in that way, because you need someone to take on the scapegoat. It's a politic kind of trick that they play on these people, and you need they need these people in society because that gives them the votes. Look at people like Farage, Nigel Farage and UKIP and the rise of UKIP. It's the same story in the UK. Uneducated and disenfranchised whites in the north and northeast, who are blaming everything on everyone else but the people who they elect to be responsible for these things.
Let me jump in and add that you left off one group too. You left off the older people, and they appeal to fear. So what Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson did was instill fear in these older people that they're going to lose the England they grew up in. And that encouraged them. So it was the uneducated and the older people who feel a fear because of change that they don't understand.
Well, well, David, I think that's already kind of happened in the UK in terms of what Kervin said happened in the 80s. The older people, they've already been through those. And I think what has happened is there was a lot of uprisings between the 70s and 80s. And then things kind of went calm in the 90s, and everyone's been enjoying the 90s and 2000s. But then since all the kind of, since 9/11, everything, like, all these kind of, like, racist rhetorics have started to kind of reappear and etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think obviously it's been, and the rise of groups like UKIP in the 90s, the BNP were about, but they were kind of quite suppressed. Whereas now UKIP, to me, they're more or less the same.
By the way, you also got to remember that those other National Front, etc., they had the military.
Exactly.
They had the military wing, which was Combat 18, and some of you didn't hear about.
They still exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
They still exist.
But most of them have been silenced.
That's it. But because what they now realize is that. But you know why? Because as I said, in the 90s, everyone was getting along. In the 80s and 90s, London kind of blossomed in the multicultural melting pot, and everyone was getting along. Everyone was raving together in the jungle and acid raves and all the dance raves. Even now, when you go out, it's very multicultural when people go out. And in, like, say, that's why London wouldn't vote out of Europe. You understand? But the rest of up north, where it's not really like that, and the uneducated whites are mad at the Asians who more or less run the town now. You understand? Because they run all the local businesses, so they're mad at them.
They also run most of the drugs too, by the way.
Definitely. So they're mad at them, and they're frustrated, and that's what people like UKIP are putting on them. You understand? And that's why it's kind of resurfacing now.
Now, we've got Paula Arrietta on the sidelines, and I want to bring Paula in now because Paula, by no small imagination, is not black. If you saw her photograph, you know that Paula is not a black woman, but she has been a staunch supporter of Black Lives Matter from its forming. Now, the first question I want to ask you, Paula, as we start to get into the nitty gritty, as we call it here, is what prompted you to get on board Black Lives Matter in the first place?
Well, I've always been, activist for police brutality. I've had my own experiences that have not turned out real well. So I do know the feelings of being treated less than, not mattering. And I think that's, most definitely what's fueling everything. For me, what I see new is a beautiful black people standing up in unity and showing the rest of the world exactly how it's done. That's what I see. And I love that. That's what I love. I mean, because they did it back in, the 60s. It's like history repeating itself. And for me, I always knew it was going to be big. But then that's my faith in, in my creator. And I always knew that this isn't going away. This is not going away at all. I think that we're going to work towards progress. I think there's going to be lots of struggles. And the hard part is, yes, there's going to be many sacrifices.
What is it about Black Lives Matter doesn't the general American people get?
Just that. It's like I've said before, white America has been spoiled with privilege. They've always mattered, right? Am I right or am I wrong? I mean, and for some reason or another, they have this view. They have this view of that black people are uneducated, the Hispanics are uneducated. You know what? It's turned the tables now with the internet and everything else. I see far more minorities hitting their computers, hitting their books and learning than I do see white America.
Here's the thing, though. Here's a little concept for you. There are a lot of people, as you said, hitting their computers and hitting the buttons and learning, but there's not enough people actually living an experience, and that's the problem that's causing the division, right, between cultures and communities now, because there's not enough intermingling and living together in the communities that has actually been created.
Kerwin,
go ahead.
I like to intercede on that. She's right. I find that to be based on how the media views it. In 1995, I would say, I was younger, I would ask other white, Caucasian, Hispanic people, do you have black friends? That question would always end with no, just you.
Yeah, I remember those days too.
Today in 2016, you ask that question, and everybody has a black friend. I myself have Chinese Indian friends. Mm-hmm. I think the internet and the search and the wanting to know more and understand other cultures based on music, food, and just people wanting to be worldly. Just like you said, the Pokemon Go. There's people that want to travel the world just to take pictures. And I think that has led America to be a lot more of a melting pot than the internet is allowing you to see.
Okay, well,
the Black Lives Matter.
Watch this, guys. Here's the thing. Here's the reality. What you're saying all sounds good, but what I'm struggling to come to grips with at the minute, if that being the case, then why is there still so much opposition to Black Lives Matter? Okay,
that's another question that is, I think, is used by the media. The major cities, there is no anti-Black Lives Matters. There isn't the KKK marching after they march in Brooklyn. We don't really have that. What I think is happening is it's poorly done. It's almost like it's reminiscent of the Occupy Wall Street group. They cross the highway, they shut you down, they blocked the Verrazano before. Certain things are done in poor taste. I think if they want to bring it to their front door, go stand in one police plaza.
Okay. I hear that.
So that's what I think the opposition comes from. In the middle America, just like Dr. Romei said, it's fear-based. They never seen a black person in Arkansas, Nebraska. It's sprinkled. It's far and in between. So when you hear that there's going to be 300 young black males in your neighborhood tomorrow protesting, angry, it lends the fear technique. But I'm telling you, the movement is very sprinkled. There's Latinos, Chinese, Indians, as far as I've seen. I find that the media uses the outlet whenever they never put anybody educated in front of the camera. I'm tired of watching these protests and they grab somebody that's 24 years old with a bandana around his neck and he has to speak for me.
Yeah.
Please grab the older lady in her 50s that's there with tears in her eyes. Let her tell her piece. The media is to blame too. The movement is not as barbaric and inhumane as they want it to seem, and it's all based on fear. If we get the older white and the middle-aged white man to vote Donald Trump in based on fear, we've won.
But hang on a minute, Sean. That's the platform that the media actually works on. They're running around the streets with their camera, and they're looking for somebody that's agitated, angry, and aggressive, in emotion of performing something quite violent in order for them to boost their ratings. Because their editor, their producer, their director doesn't want to see a crying mother who's protesting against her lost child.
Yes. That's the narrative. That's the person that needs to speak. I don't want to know what a 17-year-old boy is feeling right now. Another thing that I have to say before I go is both gentlemen that were killed recently by police officers for legally carrying a firearm in the United States were legally able to do so and were killed. And I feel the NRA should be ashamed that they never paid for any of these funerals, came out right and apologized to the family, condemned the police department, nothing. And the same NRA gave George Zimmerman, I think it was $1 million for his legal fund.
Yeah.
These are the people we have to hold accountable. Don't block the Verrazano Bridge. Go stand wherever the NRA has their major headquarters. Please, go protest right there. These are the people that's holding us back. It's not me trying to go to work, trying to get to Merrill Lynch or corporate Apple or something like that you deem to be the man. The man is right there. It's the NRA. It's the Republican National Convention. It's certain things. And I think the Black Lives Matter needs to focus and get the proper leadership, and the proper leadership would put them in the right places. The reason Martin Luther King made a dent is because he was in the right places. We can't just protest to protest either. We can't tear up our neighborhoods to tear up our neighborhoods just so the media has a story.
You know, the funny thing is,
young people.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that, because one of the things that I always found absolutely double damaging was people who would start to demonstrate and riot in their own communities, knowing that that's the playgrounds that their children would have to play in tomorrow. I never did quite get that. But again, if what you're saying, you do, come in, Paula.
Yeah,
let's get you in. Let's get it.
The youth are angry. The youth are angry. Who do you think sitting in the juvenile halls? Who do you think is the most targeted by police?
Yeah.
Who do you think?
It's the youth.
Yeah. They're angry, and they're just making their voice heard. And you know what?
But in fairness, Paula,
to a certain extent, hang on, to a certain extent, I support them. No, not destroying and harming other people, no. But a few things, a few constructive, organized things, go for it. You know what? There is such a thing as civil disobedience, and there is such a thing as making sure that things aren't silenced by the news media anymore.
But is there not more positive and productive and constructive ways of demonstrating and bringing the argument to the streets? 1 second, guys. 1 second, guys.
This is another point I would like to make. Sorry.
Guys, we can't talk over each other, right? Here's the thing. Going back to that very same point, I understand people need to protest. I understand they need to raise awareness. I understand that they want people to know what it is that they're talking about and bring their cases to light and to the media attention. But still, trashing your own community, the very community that you have to live in, trashing the playgrounds in which your children have to play in, trashing the shops and stores that you're then going to have to rely on in order for you to put food in your house. Surely that's a negative reaction and defeats the objective.
Now, I would like to say that Paula,
just angry.
Okay.
Paula, I understand that, but this is David. And then I think, was that Sean?
Yeah, Sean wants to come in also.
Yes, I'll come in after you, David.
You're sure? You want to go first?
Yeah, okay. So my point being, every time, historically, in the United States, whenever they have these big riots, Newark, I think there was a couple in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. Whenever we have these riots and we tear up our neighborhood, what the bank does is actually sell it back to somebody else, and then we get gentrified. It's how we lose neighborhoods like Brooklyn. I think we had a riot in '96. I forgot the name of the case. There was a Jewish guy that hit a kid with a car in Crown Heights. They had a riot. Half of Crown Heights was black. Half of Crown Heights is no longer black. So if we tear up our own buildings that we can't sustain and we can't put back, we don't even own businesses in our neighborhoods in the first place. There is no mom and pop store. It's usually an Arab store or an Asian store or something like that. We don't own the businesses. So we drive those people out, and then the bank sells it to Old Navy or whatever the thing. We're driving our own selves out these neighborhoods too. And it happens a lot in Brooklyn. Wherever there's any disrepair, the Bronx, any of these neighborhoods where they can't really force you out, if you tear the neighborhood up, the bank outprices you, and then developers come in, investors, and you lost your whole neighborhood. And I through history, I've seen it happen time and time again.
Okay, coming in, David.
Yes, sorry.
I think that what you and Sean are saying doesn't exactly disagree too much with what Paula is saying. I think that to tear down your own home and neighborhood because you're demanding justice from those who have taken it from us or you is kind of ridiculous. You know, the people who protested Wall Street, they didn't protest in their middle-class homes or in their homes in New Jersey or Massachusetts. They went to Wall Street and protested.
Yeah.
And if I lived in a neighborhood of Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, Mississippi, or Tulsa, Oklahoma, I would, if I was a black person, and I'm not black, but if I were black or if I were a person being protested or oppressed, I would gather my people, as I think Sean was referring to, get your people together, and I would march in the wealthiest neighborhood of that town. I would march in front of the newspaper owner's home, in front of the mayor's home. I would sit outside the home of the business leaders. I would bring it to them.
Absolutely.
Say,
my point.
You have brought your police into my neighborhood and shot my son who had a weapon legally, or who had drugs legally, or who was selling a cigarette for 25 cents, and you strangled him to death. All right? You came into my neighborhood and poo-pooed. I'm coming into yours and doing the same. You're not going to have peace. We're going to have 500 people watching some Mexican cut your grass, tend to your flowers, bring you groceries to your home. When your children go to school, we're going to follow them to school, just like you follow ours. We're going to make your life
never been done.
As miserable as our lives.
What David is saying is being done. That's exactly why they were at the mayor's house in Baton Rouge. That's exactly why they were at the mayor's house in Santa Fe. They are doing that. But see, what people don't understand about the youth is it takes a little while. Of course, you're going to get your first inflamed Albuquerque, New Mexico, your first inflamed Ferguson, your first inflamed Baltimore, people hurting and just acting in anger and being upset at first. But they are organizing now, and that's exactly what they're doing. And I can't fault them at all, because I think all the older people are definitely grabbing the youth, and they're definitely bringing them in and saying, hey, let's do it this way. But what's going on now is they're all being arrested. Everybody's being arrested, and we're paying back into the same system that we've always been paying into. So it just is a vicious cycle right here.
But it's not done enough, Paula. Paula, it's not done enough. Let me give you an example. I live in Connecticut. In my town, which was founded in 1641, so it's an old city in America, in my town, a Republican troublemaker decided that she's going to have a Blue Lives Matter after the New Orleans crisis, Dallas crisis. A Blue Lives Matter. Now, this Republican nabob has never done a thing for any black soul in this city. I have never seen her at our food bank. I have never seen her give clothes to the poor in the winter. We have a program where, because we don't want to humiliate people, a very good woman started a program. And what we do is go to neighborhoods where there are poorer people, Hispanics, blacks, whites, it doesn't matter, and we hang on the neighborhood trees, the branches, scarves and gloves and coats and things that they need. And they can come out and take them when nobody is looking, so that they're not humiliated. We do this. I have never seen this Republican troublemaker there. So she decided to have a Blue Lives Matter event in this town. She did. You know what? The black people and the white people like me protested, and they had to cancel it. And there is no Blue Lives Matter. And the police chief and mayor came out and said, we don't need a Blue Lives Matter. Our city is working fine together, and we're going to have a meeting for all the blacks and the whites together, and we'll discuss how we can move our town forward in light of these recent events. Now, that is the way you work together.
Absolutely, spot on.
I completely. You know, but we can't look at what I was saying is we can't look at what's happened in the past. Ferguson was 2 years ago. Baltimore was a year ago. Albuquerque, New Mexico was 2. What's happening is white people are looking at those things, and that's what they're complaining about, and that's what they're saying on social media, and that's so over with. I mean, really, it's over with. That, to me, that's not what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing, like I say, is groups really getting together, organizing. I see mothers and communities grabbing children, grabbing the whole block, grabbing people, just like you're saying, and actually starting to work with these kids. And that right there is what's going to make the difference in the angry children who want to go out, or the youth, the 17 and 8-year-old who are going to, throw rocks and paint and tag and do all those other things. Bringing those people in to do constructive, organized work is exactly what needs to happen.
Come back
because that's what's happened in my life. Whenever I've had the troublemaker children in the neighborhood, the children that nobody wanted, the ones that the parents couldn't handle anymore. So I brought them in. I worked with them, and now they're wonderful adults with the families that, you know, I'm very, very proud of. And so what I think is going on is happening, probably just not as fast as we all would want. You know, everybody in America wants everything instantaneously. It needs to change now.
I think that's what a lot of people around the world want, is a microwave, a microwave response. Hang on a minute, David. Sean wants to come in. Sean needs to come in very quickly. Let Sean come in.
Yeah, very quickly. Paula, I want to just piggyback on something you said. In fairness, I want to go on record. The movement, it started off bad. It takes one or two things to throw everything off course, but there's way more peaceful movements than there is violence. There's way more blocking the bridge and all of that. Like I said, there's way more community-driven things than a couple of incidents. So I don't want to put a negative spin on Black Lives Matter. That wasn't the intent. I was just saying certain things weren't perpetrated, but these were things from a year ago, closer to the strangling in Staten Island, closer to those things. Moving forward, it has gotten a lot more fast-paced, peaceful, and the community seems to be behind it.
Come in, David, very quickly.
And I think that's going to continue. I really do. That's what I see.
I just wanted to add, it wasn't a statement, about people wanting things immediately. There's a difference between wanting something immediately and what it is you want immediately. For example, I think if you want to increase the education, that has to come with time, because it's something you can't have immediately. I think if you want to increase your level of income, I think that has to come with time. But I think if you want to have the right to vote, that has to be today. It has to be yesterday, in fact. I think if you want a right to ride on a bus with anybody else, that has to be today. I think if you want the dignity to live your life and not be shot by a policeman, that has to come today. There are some things that you shouldn't have to wait on. It should have already been in the law. So what you are willing to wait for depends on what it is. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
I agree. I know, I totally agree. But the organization of bringing different groups and different age groups, especially age groups, together, that kind of thing is going to take a little while. So you see a little uproars. You know what? I've seen far more people killed by police than I have seen hurt. And so who cares about materialistic things? I care about life. Forget the materialistic things. Those things can be replaced.
You know, funny thing is, I actually agree with you wholeheartedly, Paula. And as much as I throw in the devil's advocate and the spanner in the works, it's deliberate in order to prompt and provoke this debate that we're having now, which I think is one of the best debates that we've ever had on this subject on Issues Today and World Jam Global. But let me just broaden this a little bit more, because we've had people like Cephas Uncle Bobby Johnson, Greg Greer. You've had people like the Million Mask March. There's all of these different protesting infrastructures now that are pooling people together. But again, I think you're right when you say it's not enough. It's not often enough, and it's not always going to the heart of the matter. For me, I would like to see these protests, when they take place, go and surround the actuating police station that the officers who killed these individuals were sent out from.
Fueling all this. Let's go protest in front of the news media, because you know what? They're a big part of the problem. Let's go protest in front of unions, because they're a big part of the problem.
And that's what we need to be. Yeah, come in, Daniel.
I just add something? You know what? You just said something, and it just touched my heart dearly. Yeah, because this is what I'm trying. This is kind of what I wanted to kind of bring to the table. Now, I think, now you're with me in the UK as well. I don't know what you guys in America know about England and police brutality, but it does go on here. It might not be as rife, but what it is, they deal with it a bit more neatly and discreetly. When Kervin was about my age, it was a lot more rife and more upfront. I'm sure you would Agree with that, Kerwin?
Oh, absolutely. I'll share some details with you shortly. Carry on.
Sus laws and all that.
Absolutely.
Right, so it was more upfront, but now things have got a bit more underground, and in spite of that, we have had a few high-profile cases, i.e., the Mark Duggan and Smiley Culture. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know about those police murders over in the States.
Yeah. No, they probably don't. They again, just as we don't get their high profiles unless it becomes national news, they don't get ours.
Okay, well, as I say, we do have our fair share of police brutality, and you know, when I look at I love history and all that, and I noticed that when things happen in America, I think we need to be very watchful of what's going on in here. Just like David said, yeah, America's at a crossroads. I believe the UK is at a bit of a similar crossroads in, you know, how this country goes forward or whether it regresses. In terms of like the whole Brexit thing, and as you say, like the uneducated population, you know, bringing in the whole Rule Britannia and racist rhetoric, and you know, with the leadership of like Theresa May and you know Boris Johnson as foreign minister. I mean, come on, how crazy is that? I think that's just as crazy as Trump being American president.
Two peas in a pod.
Yeah, you understand, but that's what I'm saying. Just as crazy stuff is going on here in the UK, and I think, you know, when you said about going to the police station, remember they done that in Tottenham?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you have to realise, is in the initial stages, like Paula said, yeah, in the initial stages of these kind of uprisings, yeah, there will be lashing out, yeah, right? The angry, you know, knee-jerk reaction, you know, the inflamed, enraged, the initial. You understand? Because it's fresh. The wound is still fresh. But as time goes on, movements form and, you know, like, and develop. And I believe, like what Paula said, like, now you're going to see more organized stuff. Like, even over
here's the thing, though. Here is the real thing. Most of the media won't report the peaceful demonstrations because there isn't an edge. It's not newsworthy. Right, so they're not going to report, you know, 2,000 guys or 10,000 guys peacefully marching
in
through.
Front of their building.
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys
exactly.
One second. About the one in Oxford Street over here. Black Lives Matter thing in Oxford Street.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard,
yeah. But they wouldn't hear about that in America because that wouldn't be publicized because it was too peaceful. But if it kicked off there, I bet they would have heard about it.
Yeah. But we also had the Million Mast March here in November, which created havoc, and they did hear about that because that was part of a universal anonymous movement, which took place in various other cities around the world simultaneously at the same time. So these type of protests were being aired and put on social media as they were taking place. So you know, the ones that took place especially in the West End and in the UK in November on the Million Mast March, that was brought to the attention worldwide because it was collaborated with all the others. But no, you're quite right, Daniel, that most of the issues that we have here in this country are just weaned off. They're put to one side. But going back to what we were trying to say and really trying to bring that back to light is when we do these protests, when we do these marches, when an individual's life has been taken, instead of tearing down our local community and breaking the windows of our local stores and shops, let's go down and camp at the police station. Let's go down and camp at the courthouses that are letting these officers off free, that are not indicting them, that are not charging them. Let us go to their places of business, right? And make ourselves a nuisance there. Because I guarantee you one thing, while we're making ourselves a nuisance there, that would be newsworthy. Is that not what we should all be trying to head towards, to make a positive impact in our protesting, but making sure that the targets are the right ones? Because let me just say this, Joe Bloggs in his local store down the road from our house, right, who's been serving us for the last 15 years, is not responsible for young Jimmy Joe that just got shot by a police officer the other day. Right? But he's the one that we're punishing when we're smashing his windows and we're looting his shop. So the point I'm trying to make is, let's stop tearing down our communities and let's take it to where it belongs. Let's go to the police stations. We're going to get shot anyway. So what's the difference? What are we afraid of? Let's go to the courthouses. Let's go to the mayor's office. Let's go to the local, the places where they do their business. and we don't actually normally get a look in. Let's bring the battle to where it belongs, in their own backyard, and take it out of ours. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Would you not agree with that, Paula?
Oh, yes, I completely agree with all that, but you're not going to get the news media there.
Oh,
when you do a peaceful protest in front of the in front of the mayors.
Oh, I'm not calling for a riot. I'm not calling for a riot. But I wasn't suggesting a peaceful demonstration out there either.
No, what she's saying is they have steam, man. No, they have a media blackout. I worked across the street from the mayor's office, and if you protest in front of the mayor's office, there'll be absolutely no cameras. You'll be able to have your freedom to assemble, but there'll be no cameras. You won't do it on the government's time.
Until you come up with a sensational.
You got to understand, Wall Street is literally 4 to.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you guys? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Same block. It's on Chambers Street.
I'm here.
Okay.
We're all here.
Here's the thing, right, guys? Let me just bring you on another line a second. When we did the Cardiff 3 protest, right? I hear exactly what you're saying, and you're probably right. If you go and protest outside the mayor's office, you're not going to get no TV cameras. But here's what we did, right? We started our protest in our own backyard. When we did the Cardiff 3 campaign in 1990, 1991, whatever it was. We had Reverend R. Sharpton come over, along with the Black Panther movement, and we started on our front line. And we had thousands of people. We also had the Guildford Four, who was part of the IRA, who were again, they weren't part of the IRA, but they were convicted for bombings that they didn't. Another miscarriage of justice. We had I think it was Jerry Kelly we had with us, who was part of the Guildford Four. He was marching with us also, and we took our march right from our own doorstep, right, with the cameras, with the media, and we took it to town. We stopped the whole of the city that day. We took it right outside the law courts, right outside the head central police station. That's where we took it. And we got everybody to follow us. And as we were marching, and as we were protesting, and as we were chanting out, people that were just out on it, and we did it on a Saturday, on the peak time shopping, 12:30, midday we set out, when we knew the town would be busy. And we took it to town, and we managed to rope in as many people in town as we could. That brought the town and the shopping centres to a standstill. It wasn't our local shops or on our street corners that were jeopardised and that were made to lose any business. We brought the town to a standstill. They had to pay attention. And yes, it still took us 4 years to get these people out of prison for a crime that they didn't commit. I'm telling you something. When you organize it and orchestrate it correctly, the news media has no option but to follow you. So you will get the cameras there. They're probably not going to meet you there, but they will follow you from where you're at, and then you take it.
The thing is, Kervin, you get into those situations, they then deem a larger crowd as unlawful. Mm-hmm. They start to make multiple arrest. So it's almost like you're able to protest where you're allowed to protest. You go too far, then you could be arrested.
Well, that's not for me. I don't think that there's going to be arrests, and that's fine. But for me, I just don't believe in paying back into that same system that's taking from you anyway. That's the system that you're trying to shed light on. Seek justice, and protesters are shelling out what $5, $6, $7,000. But I do like the fact that they're finding them that the arrests are unlawful, and that the ACLU is coming in, and you've got these other agencies that are out there watching, and all that's good. I think everything is going pretty good, really. I don't think it should. I don't see, other than the fact that police really need to really definitely. And I can't even say reforms. Oh my gosh, tear it down, start over.
Absolutely,
because it's bad. The systemic racism is so bad that's what's fueling all the little the media saying that Black Lives Matter is, a terrorist group and all that stuff. You know, it's okay. The police, and if you look at them, the police and their families and their supporters are organized people. That's just, and they've always been. Okay, they've always been when something happens to one of their own. And I agree with that kind of getting together when you're in, you know, some kind of family. And that's exactly what Black Lives is learning. And that's exactly what even white people and Black people and Native American, you know, they're all gravitating towards that. But they've never had that before. So therefore, it's just forming. And it's going to continue. It's not stopping.
Where do you see Black Lives Matter making a real impact in the infrastructure of law enforcement, changing the way they deal with not just the killings and executions of innocent individuals, but also the discipline of the officers, reform in order for them to be able to face some form of charge?
They're starting to see the bigger picture. They're starting to see that it's the criminal justice system. They're starting to see that it's the prosecutor, it's the public defender, they all eat from the same table. They all get paid from the same entity. So the only thing they're doing is making wheels and deals, and that's it. And the people are seeing that. They're starting to understand that. A lot of people who haven't been or gone through the system they didn't know those things, and those things are being brought to light, and I think that's good. And that's what I keep seeing in everything moving forward. But as I said, you know, you cannot take something that has been so bad for so long and expect instant results. It's going to take a while. It's going to take years, but I think the direction is great.
Yeah. You know,
The
thing is, I can't help but agree with you, Paula. I mean, the bottom line is I've watched Black Lives Matter grow. Just even in the year and a half, almost 2 years that I've been dealing with police brutality cases here on Issues Today and World Jam Global. I never imagined we would have been doing this for as long as we are. I anticipated doing different types of shows each week on various different subjects, but Black Lives Matter, police brutality, and unlawful killing has kept me very, very busy indeed, and has kept me and Dr. David on our toes with something to shout about almost every week. But here's my biggest frustration.
Don't forget Sandra Bland. We're the ones who made Sandra Bland's case a national issue.
Absolutely. First, we were first on the case with the Sandra Bland, and profiled it worldwide. But here's my biggest bone. I struggle with how come the law fraternity, the powers that be, cannot see the injustice of what they're meting out to the public. When you look at John Crawford, you know, such a powerful story. You got to remember John Crawford's last words as he lay on the floor after he was shot dead within 3.2 seconds of the officers coming into that store was, "It's not real." He'd picked up a BB gun in the Walmart store where, you know the story about John Crawford, right, Paula?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I do.
And his father was actually at the house while his girlfriend was on the phone to him as he drew his last breath. And what was surprising to me was we had there was this thing that they call out there in America called swatting, where people, you know, white males are calling 911 and claiming they are black individuals waving guns around the place, yes. Which is what took place on that occasion. But what I cannot understand was why the officers, when they arrived, having been told that there's a mad black man waving a gun around, and having been told that he'd been waving it at children and a mother who'd gone past them, etc., how when they arrived, how not visualizing a scene of panic, in other words, had there been a madman waving a gun at people in a frantic manner, people would have been running out of the store screaming, "There's a man in there with a gun," or something of the sort. But when the police arrived, they didn't see any of that. Not one officer tried to make contact with the store manager or a store worker to find out if there was something going on, to help rescue evacuate anybody that could be possibly caught in the crossfire. You know, none of that was done. But in 3.2 seconds, John Crawford lay dead on the ground with a toy gun, a BB gun in his hand, that he'd picked up off the shelf from a store that sold it. Right?
Well, you know why that is, right? You know why that is.
I know why that is,
but on a black man. Because somebody called on a black man, and you know what? I think that white America is pretty cowardly, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a 5'2" woman. And I have a group of 50 people at the end of my street, a group of 50 homeless. And every nationality you can figure, from the Indians who have been drinking half the day to a group of black people standing there, to a few white people that are homeless there, and I have no problem walking past any of them.
Yeah.
White America, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to be totally honest with you. The white America wants to act like they're, oh, well, I've got all these guns and everything else. Well, you know what? This 5'2" woman has no problem walking down the street and saying, hello, how are you?
And that's the bottom line. It seems like they've cocooned themselves in their own fear, and they walk around perpetuating that fear and exhibiting it on others, and then they're surprised about the response that they get when they behave that way. But still, to me, the biggest irony and the biggest injustice of this all, and one of the biggest frustrations that I see for all of us, is that when a wrong is done, when you know it's wrong, when it's apparently, blatantly, obviously wrong, why ain't they repercussions? Why ain't they retraining? If the local captain was to say, my guys made a mistake here, we're going to retrain them, we're going to re-educate them, we're going to take them back onto the shooting range, and we're going to take them back into problem-solving trainings, reaction thinking. We're going to do something to re-educate them to make them better officers for the community. If they were to... coming in, Daniel.
That they can't do that, because then that would be like an admission. They're never going to make an admission.
But everybody, man, dog, and monkey can actually see that this is blatantly wrong.
Of course we know, and they know it, but to set
I think that starts with our leader.
If they make an admission, then they have to address it.
But without addressing it, you allow the problem to continue, which is what we're seeing today.
Well, as I said, Rodney King was when I was a kid, and now it's still the same. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry. Come in, Paula.
No, I was just going to say, doesn't that start with our leader? Obama only made suggestions to police departments, not anything mandatory. Suggestions.
And there lies another problem, Paula, because for me there's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people talking positive about President Obama. But let me just say this: if I was an American and I was part of the community that voted in the first black president of my country, I'd have expected him to have had a better voice for me. And he hasn't done that. I know David is going to disagree with me on this, but I don't believe...
I am too.
I am really disappointed that he's still been a puppet. And his legacy could have been, this is my last year, I am going to make changes that they're going to have to look pretty damn foolish in changing when I've gone, if they're going to change them.
Yeah, but Kervin.
In fairness, the president doesn't make changes. He makes suggestions that Congress vote in. Well, we still have to get Congress to work with him. But this is the first time that we've had a president that Congress has literally vetoed and shot down almost everything. The first time in history.
Not only that, but on the day he was inaugurated, there was a conspiracy of the Republican House Speaker and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to ensure that Barack Obama was a failed presidency and a one-term presidency. And they would vote no on every single initiative, delay every single move he made.
Everything. Numerous Republicans went on record saying that their career from this point out is to screw President Obama. Numerous Republicans. And in fairness to what you were saying about nobody speaking out for us, a perfect example was Mayor de Blasio. He has a black wife. He has an interracial son. Son has a big afro. The man tells his son, you have to be careful walking in this gentrified neighborhood in Brooklyn because the police can mistake you and blah, blah, blah. our PTA group, the NYPD, these people turn their back on the mayor in numerous public events. Imagine being the mayor of the biggest city in the world and your police department will turn their back on you.
Wow. That in itself is shocking, but that's almost like a police officer going out to a firearm scene without the backup of his officers.
And why is anybody knocking President Obama? I mean, I will say that one thing as far as a leader goes. Okay, as far as a leader, okay? But who's to say what's he going to do after he leaves?
Who's to say? This could be the leader of the Black Lives Matter. This is what you got. This is what I think the movement needs. We need somebody
I think he's gradually learning as well. And I think that because, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I told my 8-year-old daughter, you want to be president? Go for it, child. Oh, a few years later after high school and everything, I said, oh, you still want to be president? No, they can't do anything.
Yeah, hands tied.
Yeah, Kervin.
And here's the thing, because talking about democracy, our prime minister in this country, rightly or wrongly, has been able to make decisions without the backing of its parliaments, which has got us into some trouble over the years. To be honest,
Obama has done that as well.
Yeah,
I mean, he's had to make executive orders. You know, he's done that as well. So I'm not, when I talk and say one thing, I never say without, saying, okay, but they haven't showed us all of who they are,
Yeah.
So he's been in one position for a little while. And oh my goodness, if anybody wants to know where racism started, it started when he became president. White America had a fit.
Yeah.
Yes, can I piggyback on that? I remember watching that and being scared and excited all in the same breath. I remember watching John McCain have to stop his speech 2 or 3 times to tell his crowd. I heard people screaming the N-word just faintly. He had to tell his crowd, no, I'm not like that. We're not about that. But, they don't let you, they don't put that out there. John McCain's speech after he lost the presidency to Obama, if you listen to the tone the gentleman was taking, it made me realize that America was on this path in the first place. Yeah. I'm not even sure that a lot of the people that support Trump is really for Trump or anti-Obama at this point.
And there lies the problem. Is America that scared of another black man raising himself in politics and becoming another president, that they would bring somebody in like Trump who would nullify that forever?
Well, let me just. I know we're coming down in half an hour now. I'd like to bring it back to Black Lives Matter and address it from, I guess I'm the white guy here in a way. Paula's a white girl. But
yes, I'm part white. I'm the rainbow.
Let me say that I think there are several things that Black Lives Matter are going to have to deal with head on as we move forward. And these are going to be more important than Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's not going to win. Let's face it, this is just a game right now. I think the first thing is we have to convince the great majority of people that Black Lives Matter is not anti-cop. It's pro-life. Yeah. And that when people like George Zimmerman goes out and kills Trayvon Martin, that's not a cop. That's just another white guy killing a black guy because he's profiled him and he hunted him like he was wild game on the plains of Kenya and the shadow of Amboseli or Mount Kenyatta. So that's what that is. The second thing is we have to deal with the idea that people say Black lives is divisive, that is trying to divide America. If anything, Black lives is trying to say, treat us like you. Yeah. Quit dividing us as black people and white people. Value my life as you value your life. Because there's one thing for certain in America that no one will ever doubt, and that is white lives matter. White lives matter. And if a white kid falls down a well 25 feet, the entire nation goes on halt until they pull up that white life. A black man is shot in cold blood in his car doing nothing, or Sandra Bland is pulled out of a car, pushed into the road, put in a prison, and hanged, and they call it suicide. That doesn't matter. So it's not divisive. It's unifying if we use it in the right way. The other thing is that Black Lives Matter is not that all cops are bad. It means that the bad cops have to be held accountable, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. And the idea that Black Lives Matter somehow is that, well, you're diminishing white lives. What about us? Well, you know what? If I'm focusing on leukemia, or I'm focusing on prostate or breast cancer, it doesn't mean that cancer of the brain is not important. It just means I'm a doctor who focuses on breast cancer, and other doctors focus on this cancer. But one thing is for certain, Black lives don't matter. They just don't matter. And if you don't believe it, look at the way prosecutors treat police when they shoot a black person versus a white person. Why can a boy in Chicago, 19 years old, go down the street and be shot 16 times and no one seems upset about it? But a white guy who tries to kill Reagan, fails to kill Reagan, is let out of a mental institution 35 years later under close guard. The whole nation is in uproar because he tried to kill Ronald Reagan. But nobody's in uproar about a cop who shoots a guy 19 times. Now, the last thing I think is very important is that we have to convince people that even though we're saying Black Lives Matter, and it is not about blacks alone. And people say, well, why don't blacks take care of themselves? Look at the high rate of black-on-black crime. I think it was Rudy Giuliani, the fascistic Republican neocon demagogic pandering, felicitous, homo-hating freak of New York City, Mayor Giuliani.
Amen.
They call him the mayor of America. If he's the mayor of America, then I'm king of the universe. Let me say something. He talks about black lives, blacks killing blacks, black-on-black crime. Well, let me ask you something. When those white kids went into an all-white theater in Aurora, Colorado, and killed those people at Columbine High School and the theater in Aurora, are the children in Newtown, in my 30 minutes away from me, killed 29 students who were ages 4 to 7 years old and their teachers? Those were all white people, killing all white people in all white upper-class neighborhoods. Was that called white-on-white crime? Was that when we say students' lives matter at Texas, at Virginia Tech down there, when a Korean went in, did we say white lives matter? No, because it's assumed that white lives matter, because the whole nation goes into an uproar. But who does that for a black person? Who did that for Sandra Bland? Of course, we know the number one cause of murder is a familial relationship. You know the person you kill. It's in your neighborhood. Naturally, it's a socioeconomic issue. Naturally, it's a racial issue. But when people take Black Lives Matter and turn the table and say, well, why don't you value your own lives? We can say the same thing to them. Why don't you white people in Newtown? Why don't you white people in Aurora? Why don't you white people in Dallas, Texas? Why don't you white people in Columbine? Why don't you white people in that McDonald's? Why don't you white people in that Jewish synagogue? Why don't you value your lives? So we have to ensure that the Black Lives Matter relates to the lives of black people being killed by white people for no other reason than they're profiled, and the police kill them to ensure that the oppressive majority is not afraid of the black out of their own criminal minds. And these 5 issues must be confronted to address the question that my good friend and partner Kervin brought up, which is, where does Black Lives Matter go from here?
You know, David, I couldn't have put that any better myself. That was absolutely bang on. Bang on. Let me throw something else into the mix. When we talk about Black Lives Matter or White Lives Matter or black on black crime or white on white crime or anything else like that, let me put it into a different perspective. You guys have heard about the football hooliganism that we've had as a problem in this country for years. No, it's not as bad as it used to be. But we're talking about hundreds and thousands of white men who line up to fight violently with the sole intent of pulverizing their opponent, who is another white person, right, on the other side, simply because they support a different football team. Now, this has been going. This is almost like a tribal thing. It's been going on for as long as they've been playing football in this country. Football thugs, football hooliganism, and that's gone out into Europe now. We saw that in the recent European Championships when the Russians went out there and met the English in France, and again, knives and guns and axes and knuckle dusters and all sorts of stuff was brought out, right? And there was a big outcry and outpouring. The media coverage and people that were injured and beaten up were treated as heroes, and yet you have Philando Castile in a car with his girlfriend bleeding out while an officer tells his girlfriend to keep her hands where he can see them. Unbeknown to him, she is actually streaming live on Facebook what is taking place in those moments. And again, there was another one which was put up, and I posted it last night. And one of the things that I have noticed in particular, which to me is a very sad indictment of what law enforcement has turned to, is the fact that these individuals, once they have been shot by a police officer, are actually allowed to bleed out and die without any paramedic help, without any medical assistance, without any life-saving intervention from the time that they've been shot until the time that they die. And that is the most inhumane thing I have ever witnessed in my life. Surely that needs to be dealt with, looked at, attacked, and made an illegality within itself. That an officer should have the right and the duty, moral responsibility to respond to an individual that he's just shot and fatally wounded, as opposed to just standing there and watching that individual die. Because that to me is the biggest travesty of all of what we're witnessing in all of these Black Lives Matter issues, where individuals are shot by police officers. To me, is watching the fact that these officers allow these individuals to die while they stand over them still holding their guns.
You're absolutely right, and I apologize. I apologize to all my Black brothers and sisters and brown brothers and sisters and Native brothers and sisters that we can't see that. But all of America can't see how wrong that is.
In the middle of arresting an individual, even if you could say that you was in fear of your life, and you thought that the individual had a weapon, and it turns out that he didn't. But you've shot him once, or you've shot him twice, or you've shot him 6 times. But he's now immobilized. Surely the most decent thing that you can do is tend to that individual's wounds and see if you can find a way to at least keep them alive long enough to stand trial for the crime that you claim that you was intercepting him for. Because to me, what you're actually doing is executing and administering an immediate, instant death penalty for a crime you've yet to charge him for. And that is one of the biggest travesties of all of these Black Lives Matter issues, which again translate to Black Lives Don't Matter.
And nobody wants the Black community to be upset about that, right?
Right.
Let that happen to my child, and good luck.
Because
I can only relate to all the emotions, and they don't even get time to grieve for their loved ones.
No. Before
they're tossed into all the trying to find video, what happened to my goodness, if humanity cannot at least place themselves in that position and say, no matter what that person has done, they're still your loved one. You still love them. No matter what. Why is it that we can't, as people, at least, see it from that perspective?
We had a particular issue that took place here back in the 80s, 90s also. A young black man was murdered by 5 racist thugs. His name was Stephen Lawrence, and you may well have heard of that particular case. And it was well known, the culprits were identified pretty soon after the event took place. It took a long time for the police to move and arrest because it was very, very similar to the Kendrick Johnson with these white guys. On this occasion, they're FBI, sons of FBI's. But one of these guys who was meant to have killed Stephen Lawrence had a connection or relation with the local police, his father or somebody.
Yeah, exactly. One of them was a law enforcement son. Yeah,
that's right. So, but it took a long time to bring these 5 men to justice, and in the end, I think it was only 2 of them that was ever sent to prison. And I'm talking about it was almost 10 years later, after continual campaigning by the mother and the father of Stephen Lawrence, by other organisations, Liberty and Miscarriages of Justice in the UK, in support of that, because for a long time nobody wanted to pursue these individuals for the loss. And so I would say we have an experience of what it is for a black life not to matter, although we don't have it on the same level that you have it out there in the US. We have experienced it here. We have seen when black lives don't matter and how the judiciary seems to ignore the facts and the evidence when it comes to bringing a white person to justice over the death of a black life. But we've never seen it in the volume that you guys are witnessing it out there in stateside. And again, I reiterate, there's probably not a week that goes by that we're not posting another Black Lives Matter related issue where another individual has been shot and killed by a police officer. And we're not talking, and again, let me just say this, because we're not talking about gangbangers. We're not talking about, rapists and pedophiles and bank robbers. We're talking about people that are genuinely going about their day-to-day business, on their way to work, on their way home from work, on their way to the shops or on their way back from the shops. Some of them on their way to go visit their girlfriends, on their way back from their girlfriends, who have been targeted by officers who are walking around in what can be only considered to be their internal fear and prejudicial view of what black people are, who are taking away these innocent black lives. How do we get the media to start refocusing their attention not on the law that protects the impunity of these officers, but on the lives that are unlawfully taken? That has to be our next directive, is it not, Paula?
Yeah, I agree.
But how do we do that?
I think a lot of that has to do with the public records.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be a really good idea for, now that you've got groups organized and whatever, to have those groups start digging into the public records. I know that our own Burke Media does that here.
Yeah.
And then you push your media. Then you start, after you've got these and you've got an idea of what's going on. It's going to take a while and it's going to take a group of people. But then you start pushing your own media, your own local media, and start saying, and what about these questions? And what about those questions? Because I know Burke Media has done it for tasers and for, going after the old police chief and stuff like that, and different, and that's exactly how they were able to find a lot of things and get these 2 officers going on trial for murder here, who murdered James Boyd.
Yeah.
I think Albuquerque has set a really super good example. For a while there, I thought California was gunning. But I think that California is so big and there's so many racist police departments that I think that it's going to have to probably, my mind is shifted to look to somebody who's a smaller group, who's definitely working. I mean, and these people are working, and I think that is going to, I think that's how we need to use social media.
Absolutely. And just one last thing, because we're going to round this up. We've got about 12 minutes left, and I'm sure everybody's still dying to get a few more things out. But with Black Lives Matter continually being portrayed, or the attempt to portray it as a racist terrorist movement, which is trying to divide communities and divide a nation. Black Lives Matter are still the only organization that anybody from any race who suffers an injustice of police brutality can expect an individual to get support from. Kelly Thomas, white individual, homeless, got more support from Black Lives Matter than he did from any other organization around the country. There was another recent issue in Texas where a young white man who had his life taken. It was Black Lives Matter that marched and supported his family. So
just the latest California, the same thing. It's always Black Lives Matter, and they're the ones that are standing there. And yes, you've got the All Lives Matter group and their Confederate flags and everything else, but Black Lives Matter and anybody else who's there. It's not just Black Lives Matter. It's anyone. They're welcome to anyone.
We're just gonna. If you're gonna bear with me 1 second, we're just gonna. I think we've just dropped the call. Bear with me as I bring it straight back. Okay, we're gonna do this. Let me just drop a track in for you, and we'll come right back just before we finish. I'm deeply sorry.
Oh,
are we there? Who we got?
I'm David.
Hi, David. Okay, we're all back. Sorry about that. We lost everybody. We're back. Okay, everybody bar Sir Kells at the moment. Did you want to just come in there, David? Because we've got 10 minutes left before we.
I think that one of the ways. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, and I'd like Sean and Paula's view on this, and anyone else who'd like. It seems to me that one of the ways Black Lives Matters could go forward and be mainstreamed is to use more of the professional sports and black political and sports leaders in America. For example, LeBron James wore a shirt on an NBA. LeBron James is one of the most famous basketball players in America, makes about $70 million a year. He wore a shirt that says, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe," after the New York incident. And I think that if we could get some more mainstream, highly respected African Americans like Kabil Jabbar or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, who's done so well, Morgan Freeman, the actor, who is very good at calling out bull, S-H-I-T. I think more and more of this would benefit the Black Lives Movement, and it would make it more difficult for the racist like Giuliani and those white people who don't like the idea that Black lives matter, that blacks are entitled to dignity. It would make them harder to speak out against it. What the Black Lives Movement must focus on, beside the day-to-day work, is on positioning themselves in a way that to criticize the word Black Lives Matter makes you an automatic racist. For example, I'm a Jew. So if you criticize Israel in America, you're an automatic anti-Semite. The minute you criticize Israel killing a Palestinian, doing something illegal, doing something wonderful, it doesn't matter what Israel or Jews do. If you criticize an Israeli or a Jew, you are automatically an anti-Semite and you're out of the mainstream. That is exactly what Black Lives Matter has to do. They have to take the position that they are Israel. And to criticize Black Lives Matter is the same thing as being called an automatic racist and you're outside the mainstream. When that happens, then you are given the room, the territory to develop the value of the Black life, the dignity, the income, the education, and all the other demands that Jewish Americans have received. You're able to do it for African Americans. And at that point, you make a transition from a protest group, an alienating group, a group that is a magnetic for insults, to a group that is untouchable and can move forward with a great mission. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That makes absolute sense. But let me break it down even simpler. Why aren't these actors and why aren't these celebrities calling up a mom who's lost their child and to demanding from the media, okay, you guys want me on my program? Then let's do an interview with this mother's mom.
Wait, in fairness, I do want to pull LeBron James out the water. He's actually ahead of every other athlete, unbeknownst to Carmelo Anthony. He stood by Trayvon Martin. He stood by the I Can't Breathe. Recently, the Orlando shooting, he's had something to say about that too. But it goes back to the corporations. Our hands are tied. Every time these guys put on a Black Lives Matter shirt, they get fined. Right now in the WNBA, there's a few players. I'm not 100% sure what team it is, but they have been wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt for the last 2 weeks and been just eating the fines. These women make about $75,000 a year, and they've just been eating the fines. It's very hypocritical.
On their shows, don't they?
I'm sorry?
But all these talk shows want these celebrities on their shows, right? The talk shows during the day. Then you're reaching the people that are sitting at home and don't get out in the community and don't have no black friends. And
it's a double-edged sword, ma'am, because the talk shows, our talk shows don't want anybody educated to speak the view. Our talk show is still going to have the 65 characters from VH1. They're still going to have the Love and Hip Hop. They're still going to have that guy. But I noticed that our celebrities, our core celebrities, LeBron James included, they have been trying to get involved, and I just want to be fair to them. They've been trying to get involved.
You're right. I mean, for Beyonce to take all those mothers and put her in the show, you're absolutely right. I have definitely
Jay-Z, Beyonce, they're always ahead of the crowd when it comes to this. It's just
my thing is just take us maybe try taking it a step further. Let's see if we can't bring a mother onto a show but ma'am, what we've always been, just like you said with President Obama, we've been faces for corporations that are using us as puppets. We don't have a voice. That we may emulate this confidence, this allure, but it's not real. The only real people of power are 3 or 4 black men, and I'm going to say it starts and probably ends between LeBron James, Oprah, and Obama. These are the only 4 or 5 people I can think that can make any kind of change and won't get backlash or held back. Maybe that's who I'm addressing is Oprah. How come she hasn't had other?
I have Morgan Freeman in there too, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if he can find. He would need a platform, but his voice is very needed and well deserved. But he would need a platform. Those 3 other. If LeBron James decides he doesn't want to play in the playoffs until we convict a police officer, something's going to happen. If Oprah decides she's going to go make her 4 or 5 networks go black, something's going to happen. If Obama decides that every time he speaks he's going to wear a Black Lives Matter pin, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes, but Morgan Freeman narrated Hillary Clinton the other night, her movie for the DNC, and he did a beautiful job. He also came out and slapped down all these homophobes, and he also comes out and defends people who insult black people, and he asks questions about police. I don't know anybody who has a platform like Morgan Freeman. He's huge.
Yeah. Absolutely,
I love him because, LeBron is in the sports world, but Morgan Freeman is beloved by white people on a level that are not interested in sports like no other black I know of. I mean,
no. I'm talking financially. Oprah and LeBron James are worth upwards of billions of dollars.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think Oprah could do more. I don't know what she does. I don't know why Oprah spends her time in Africa when she could spend her time in a neighborhood in Chicago or New York. I'm not criticizing her. I'm happy she does that in Africa. But you know what? Her pie is big enough to do things here, too.
And maybe the idea hasn't just been thrown to her yet.
Oh, please.
Maybe the idea of getting the victims of mothers and doing the show. She has her own network. Maybe she just hasn't, maybe somebody hasn't put that bug in her ear yet. I hope they do. I hope I did.
I hope we've got 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes, a minute and a half and counting. I just hope that we've been able to represent why Black lives should matter in the time that we've had. Go on.
Sorry, one last point, Kervin. One last point. To spearhead what he was saying about getting more movement with Black Lives Matter, I just had a question. Do they have any support within the police departments? Are 100 blacks in law enforcement, any predominantly Latino group, anybody behind them?
No. The answer to all of those is no. We've had Alex Salazar.
Maybe that's where the start should be.
It needs to start there. There is a whistleblowers organization, and Alex Salazar is one of the former cops who heads that. So there is an opportunity for people to stand against their officers in wrongdoing, but very few choose to do it because of the backlash it creates and the isolation they get from it, and the protection of the police force which is removed from them. But gentlemen, I really do have to call an end to today's show. I think we've got about another 3 or 4 hours left of talking material if we choose to. But unfortunately, time is at an end. It's the end of today's edition of Issues Today. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for everything that you've contributed today. And I just hope that our listeners, our audience worldwide who've listened to Whose Life Matter understands why Black lives should matter. We're out of here. Thank you very much.
Matter of yes. Thank you.
World Jam Global Radio. This is clarity.
Paula, I want to thank you guys.
Just want to thank each and every one of them again. Dr. David Romei, Paula Arrietta, Sean Legendary Skills, Downie, and Daniel Sakels Kelly for an absolutely riveting show, which will be posted very shortly. Don't forget, next week I'll be back next Saturday at a later time of 8 o'clock with my guest Denise Watson.